Our next speaker is Carlos Morales-Ramírez, and he is an assistant professor in the Department of Geography and Planning at Westchester University in Pennsylvania. He has one doctorate and he's working on another, glutton for punishment. He won the Driver Award in 2017, and he has worked to integrate vexillology into his teaching and research. And his topic today is a new method of geographic vexillology. Carlos.
So what I'm presenting here is what I'm thinking of doing for my dissertation. Obviously, this is a condensed version. So I'm actually looking to integrate flags into my world geography course. We don't have a vexillology course yet. I am working on that as well. So I'll just go over some of these areas of the research and then guide you through what I'm doing next. The way that I wrote the paper and the presentation is also meant for you to follow along if you are interested in exploring empirical methodologies, especially the one that I'm presenting here, which is one that I am exploring myself. So hopefully you do not have questions about my methods, but I will answer your questions. So I'm speaking to the choir here. Don't need to read this. Actually, we had an awesome presentation about this today. But basically what this is saying is that many vexillologists have written about vexillology as a science, right? And questioning whether or not we are doing vexillology as a science. I particularly like to think that we are. There's just different methodologies. So basing my research on that premise, I set to explore a new methodology, or maybe something that I have not seen people use. So I took that approach by taking some of the principle of vexillology. We study flags, but I took it a step further and I actually rooted my methodology in scientific method, specifically looking at arts-based research, which I'm going to summarize here. By the way, sorry, there's no pictures here. I felt like adding a random flag just for you to have a visual, but I did not think about that when I submitted my slides. So again, I am introducing this in a geography setting. I have published research looking at the geographic nature of flags. And I like to take credit for that awesome discipline called Geographic Vexillology. But there were some researchers that got ahead of me and published an article in 2019, and they call it Vexill geography, which I think it's too hard to say. It doesn't roll off easily, right? Plus, we're a little vain, so we want to take the credit for something. But it is worth acknowledging that that does exist. Their approach is very limiting, which is why I kind of like kept it generic when we're talking about geographic vexillology. Simply just study geographic elements on flags. I feel like they overdid it. They try to get too specific and they lost maybe a little bit of that. So that is where I'm actually basing this. Again, you guys all know this. I am going to use flag design because I'm going to have my students design a flag for a place that means something to them. They are allowed to choose whatever flag they want. It could be for a location that has a flag or just any place that they want. So I'll just skip over that. You guys know these principles. Of course, when you are doing research, you do have to make sure that you support why you are choosing a lot of these elements. So I did look into a lot of different vexillologists and vexillographers principles. Of course, those are the basic ones or the ones that people commonly cite. So I went ahead and went with those. And then we get to the fun part that I will probably lose you on, but this is the important part. If we are doing empirical research based on the scientific methods, we do have to root it in a methodology. A lot of the times we do see quantitative research in flags. A lot of those surveys are quantitative in nature. I think we have a presentation about quantitative research with flags, which I'm excited. I'm a quant person. I like numbers. I do not like to put myself in a position in which I bring my own biases. but I am actually going to focus on integrating either a mixture of your quantitative or your qualitative methods to see and measure how our students are actually representing the concept of place in their flag designs. But I'll focus only on the qualitative side, because here is where you could be accused of bringing your biases. Here is where you do have a lot of subjectivity. So there are a lot of things to take into consideration when you do this kind of research. But the advantage that you have is that it actually gives meaning to your information. A lot of the times with numbers, we just put a number out there, right? The level of significance is greater than 5. Cool. We love that. I love that. I said I love numbers. But qualitative gives you that opportunity of allowing the data to have meaning, provide some insights, especially when you are starting to interpret some of those results, and also continue the construction of knowledge, which is what I'm hoping this research actually achieves. With my research, looking at those student designs, the qualitative approach is actually going to allow me to interpret the activities that they're going to be doing, and I'll share those in one of the slides, interpret their experiences as well. So I am going to be recording in various ways their flag design process. And most importantly, it is going to help us understand this particular phenomena that I am hoping to interpret with this research, which is how do students display place? In this case, they're going to do it as a flag. Oh, there we go. I do not expect you to read this. It was not intended for you to do so, but it just goes over some of the methods that you have available in qualitative methodologies. You have your case study, your narrative analysis, ethnography, phenomenology, grounded theory, and then some people just say you do basic qualitative research. These are some of the methodologies I hope to explore in the future, but for this research, I'm actually going to focus on art space research, which is a recent methodology that is gaining traction. And the reason for that is because it actually looks at the principles and methods in which people actually take art and interpret it. I have a lot more information here. I'm not going to read all of it, but the one that I do want to focus on is on that first one that talks about how art space research actually allows you to utilize inquiry and expression, specifically when you look at the design process in my case, because you're going to be working on seeing how the students are actually thinking about the concept of place. I'm going to hear them talk. They're going to be recorded as well. And how do they end up with that final flag design? After all, flags are art, right? I had to defend this somehow. Otherwise, you would have looked at me like, really? We're doing that? Well, I didn't say it. Someone else did. Now, because of the nature of qualitative research, again, being subjective, people questioning, are you going to bring your biases into the research? We do have to make sure that we address things like reliability and validity. And luckily, the methodology already has that for you. So these are very specific to art space research, and they work wonderful for what I want to do. So seeking feedback from peers. I am here recruiting vexillographers, so talk to me afterwards. I do need your help for that part. Interrogating theory and integrating theory into the data analysis for this particular research. I think semiotic theory works perfectly. I'm going to focus more on the visual semiotics or social semiotics to help interpret some of these designs, and obviously making sure that you incorporate the literature as well. In this case, literature specifically about the methods, about art space research. This is the steps that, or these are the steps that I'm going to take. Right now, the project is under review. Of course, we need to make sure the research is ethical, so the university's reviewing that. They need to make sure that no one's going to have a seizure while they're designing their flags and things like that. But once we get to that step, of course, I'm going to start with anything and everything about vexillology. Again, this is going to happen in a world geography course. These are undergraduate students. Most of them are there because they were put there, so they don't want to be there. So I'm starting with that. Then, as I mentioned, based on the methodology I chose, I am documenting their design journey. So they're going to get a really nice pamphlet where they're just going to be drawing things first, right? They're going to describe the place. That way they also start getting ideas. What is it that I want to include in my design? And then they'll get to the design itself. Once they design the flags, this is not done. The intention is, again, to record all of that process. So then the discussion is going to happen. What did you choose to represent place? Why? All of that is going to be recorded. They do have to write a reflection. That is also part of what's going to give me that data about how they interpret the concept of place. And hopefully I'm going to tag it back to identity. And then they're going to do a flag exhibition, which they are already excited. I think before I got here, I said, oh, I'm going to a flag meeting. And they were like, oh, are we starting that next week? I was like, no, it needs to be approved by the university first. Oh, I had that visual there. And then finally, what are the next steps? Of course, going back into this, I need to analyze and interpret the data. The design themselves, this is the part where I do need that peer feedback. So please talk to me after. Because again, I do want to make sure that I remove any biases and also that the research is credible. And then for the arts-based methodology, I am going to look at all of these different areas and start documenting every single thing that the students are creating, saying, and writing. The exhibition itself is also part of this reliability and credibility because they are also going to give each other peer feedback. By the way, all of this is anonymized. Don't worry, I'm not going to laugh at their designs, at least not in front of them. Okay. That's it, right? Yes. Thank you. So the question is, am I going to let my students design flags of fictional places? No, it has to be a location because I am hoping I can tag it back to identity. Obviously, you could make the argument, of course, even if it's fictional, there could be a sense of identity with that fictional place, but no, it has to be a real place. It is clear that it has to be a real place and that they also have to provide me with a reason why they chose it. So they can't just say, yeah, I'm doing Minnesota at the end. They have to explain it. Yeah, so the question is, I said I needed approval from the university. When will I get the approval? So right now it is under review. The review process typically takes 3 weeks. They give you feedback. If there's no feedback, like you don't need to improve anything, then it's approved. Otherwise, you just address their comments, resubmit it again. But it should be something that I think I should hear back within the next 2 weeks. Because yeah, I think it's been 1 week since I submitted it. Yeah. Am my students going to pass my class? No. Do students appreciate how cool I am? I don't know. Because in my mind, I'm still in my 20s. So sometimes I try to joke or, say something funny and then it backfires. Like I almost started a war the other day because I said something about, I can't remember what we were talking about, but I said something, One Direction, not the band because they broke up, and whoa. And they were like, we're not getting there. I was like, oh, bad reference. So I'm hoping, but I do bring these outfits to my classroom. So yeah. Yeah, that's part of the workshops that I'm going to do, that I'm going to introduce vexillology, flag design principles. We're going to talk a lot about those. But part of the arts-based research is looking at what they chose and the reasons behind it. So I am hoping some of them do not have perfect designs and perfect knowledge of what colors to use, because that's going to enrich the data. So it's actually going to be better if some of them do not have those artistic skills. Obviously, after they design their flags, yes, it's going to be made into a proper flag. I'm not just going to show hand-drawn flags because, of course, even if they are going to be anonymized, but still, I don't want them to feel like, I'm being targeted, or I don't want you to show my design because I have poor design skills. I have poor design skills, so I wouldn't want my flag to be just shown like that. But there will be some of that. There will be some of that in the workshops. Yes. What was it? So am I going to do a flag parade? So have them, yes, take it to the audience rather than, yeah. No, because I'm taking finals week to do the exhibition. Yes, so it has to be like a Monday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And I also need that peer feedback. So yeah, so the question is, am I going to assess pre-knowledge basically? So what do the students know before coming to the research? No, that's not part of the research, although it is possible, but then it could turn it more or flip it more on the quantitative side, making it quasi-experimental. And that's not what I'm hoping to do. I do want imperfections in my results for sure, but definitely a great idea, especially if we do like a pre and post. That would be interesting. Yeah. Thank you.